Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Rex Rogosh, and let's queer up student and youth. Trump administration escalates war on Harvard and targets what it calls LGBTQ graduate majors. In a move that's raising alarms across academic and LGBTQ communities, the Trump administration has escalated its attacks on Harvard University, this time citing, quote, LGBTQ graduate majors, end quote, as one of the reasons. What began as an accusation of anti-Semitism and demands to dismantle DEI programs has now expanded into a sweeping campaign against Harvard's academic freedom. On Fox News Monday night, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt stated, quote, "We need more electricians and plumbers and less LGBTQ graduate majors from Harvard University," end quote. Leavitt suggests the president's priority is to shift federal funding from Ivy League schools to trade and state colleges that promote what she called, quote, American values, end quote. But Harvard does not offer an LGBTQ graduate major. Like most schools, it offers a program in studies of women, gender, and sexuality, an interdisciplinary field that includes LGBTQ studies, among many others. This follows a string of punitive actions from the Trump White House, including a $2.2 billion federal grant freeze and a now challenged ban on international students at Harvard. These were triggered in part by the school's refusal to discipline students protesting Israel's war on Gaza. In response, Harvard filed lawsuits calling the administration's actions unconstitutional and dangerous. President Alan Gerber, who is Jewish, wrote that the government is trying to control who they can hire and what they can teach, calling the demands illegal and a threat to academic freedom. He also warned that cutting research funding would hurt future medical breakthroughs impacting cancer treatment, infectious disease prevention, and care for wounded veterans. As court battles begin, the LGBTQ community, students, and scholars nationwide are watching closely, because for many, this isn't just about Harvard. It's about what kind of education and whose lives this country is willing to value. I'm going to bite my tongue saying this. However, this isn't about Harvard and it's not about the education. It's about the Trump's administration and Trump being wounded, his ego being wounded, that somebody stood up to him and said, hey, you can't do this. So he's throwing everything he can at them. I'm not going to disagree that we need more funding for trade schools. It is something that we are missing in this country. We have less and less trades. We have less and less people who can install tile and do plumbing and electricians and those types of things. So I don't disagree with that statement. However, I disagree with the way this is going about. You don't punish an Ivy League school, which is a private school, on one hand, and say, you're going to control how education is serviced, and then want to get rid of the Department of Education and say that lower education can be handled by the states. You can't say the same thing in both, outside of both your mouth. So this really isn't about education. It's not about what he wants in education. It's about his ego was hurt by somebody bigger and smarter than him. Plain and simple. So I have a real problem with the sentiment behind this.
I agree. And just to call it out and say electricians and what was the other one? Plumbers. It's like, and that's American values. And while I understand that, there's so many other jobs out there that are American values, not just those two, right? I mean, we have a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage,
Correct.
People are aging in our country. And we don't have enough doctors that take care of somebody aging. Gerontology is just not a growing field for medical, and the medical expertise is out there for that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I mean, I do believe that we should be funding alternate educational processes. Not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody, has the level of I want to go to college, and that doesn't make them any less of a person. It doesn't make them any less smart. Right. I know that's probably not the right way to say that. However, the way that this administration is going about it is purely retaliatory against being stood up against. It has nothing to do with the education.
I wonder how many people on his staff might have one of those degrees.
I guarantee you none of them.
Yep, but it's also one of those things, coming as somebody who is a native New Englander, and Harvard is especially something that we hold a lot of pride in New England, but also as somebody who went to a trade school before I ended up going to college. The importance of trade education is a real thing. As you had mentioned, not everybody's cut out to go to college. Not everybody wants to go to college. And there is a surefire way to make sure that you can have a solid, good paying job in investing in the trade schools. But a lot of this conversation that I've seen with the Trump administration, we're not focusing on the right things. Right now, if we want to talk about what people are really feeling, they're not worried about LGBTQ graduate majors. They're worried about, how am I putting food on the table? How are these tariffs that you're trying to impose, how is that going to raise prices? I know people who make close to six figures who have difficulty making their ends meet, including student loan payments. We need to have real discussions on the real crux of the issues. Trump is just deflecting by going into culture wars, by instead of ignoring economic reality.
And none of them are majors anyway.
Yep.
So it's not like I'm graduating Harvard with an LGBTQ major. It's a combination of things. So again, you're right. He's deflecting, and he's a wounded child with a battered ego. So that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.